Welcome, explorers. Fasten your taste bud, folks. This is the Flavor Expedition, and we're ready to embark on an incredible journey through the world of flavors. We're diving into the depths of food trends, exploring exotic taste, and navigating the ever-evolving food and beverage industry. Buckle up as we take off to explore the delicious, the daring, and the downright delightful dishes from across the globe. We are ready to set your palates on flavor-packed adventure, so let's get rolling. Hey everybody, welcome to the Flavor Expedition. I am your co-host, Dan Fallacy. Alongside with me is the always infamous Chase Obidin.
Oh, hello. I appreciate the infamy. Stop it.
You always gain an applause. I never get anyone to applause for me, Chase. But there's something special about you, and I certainly would applaud you as well. But hey, thanks for joining me today and being a part of this fun adventure, the Flavor Expedition.
We are happy to be here.
Yeah, man, we're going to be taking an overview, touching a little bit about beverage trends, right?
Yeah. So, for all the listeners out there, we wanted to, shake things up a little bit. No cocktail pun intended there, but essentially, we wanted to each look at the world of beverages and alcoholic, cocktails and so forth, and kind of come back to this one with our own specific and distinct separate thoughts that we haven't really discussed what our thoughts were. We're going to be hashing them out in front of you as we speak. So
it's a battle royale,
the
right?
live discussion. That's right.
Yeah. And I have something for your pun. So hold on a second. It's a little delayed, but so was the joke. All right. Yeah, no, thank you guys so much for joining us. We're going to be jumping into beverages. And as Chase had mentioned, I think we've really kind of taken two different approaches to this topic, and we'll kind of see how they blend together and how we can mix them and really satisfy your thirst in this category. So let's, mine was seamless. That was good.
Man, that was good. I'm taking notes on this side.
Yeah. So Chase, why don't you do a quick favor and bring our listeners, those new, young, and old, to us up to par on how we're going to walk through this.
Yeah. So for any first listeners, welcome to the Flavor Expedition, and any returning explorers, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us on this one. But we always have the same general format for our episodes. The way that we like to think of it is a beginning, middle, and end. The beginning being unearthing a topic, and essentially in that section, we look into the past, the history of that topic, and where it came from. The middle portion of the episode is essentially discovering that topic, that trend. That's where it is in the present, how it manifests on menus or across the nation, the world today. And then lastly, it's bringing it home. So now that we've made this discovery, we've unearthed the past, we know what it looks like, we know what it is. How do we look into the future? What do we see for it? And what are some maybe fun, interesting opportunities for taking that topic, that trend, that flavor to the next level?
Yeah, perfect. That's an excellent description of what we're doing. And I think we can just jump right into taking a look at what we have going on here. I think what we should be looking at first in beverages is just kind of talking about the general history of them. And I'm going to start with a little bit about the alcoholic side of beverages and kind of the history of fermentation in beverages and the use of it. Some of the beer, wine has been around centuries and eons, but it was kind of more modern history in the year 1651. There was a particular doctor, I guess you would call him, John French, and he published the book The Art of Distillation. And so that was kind of a jumping point for a lot of people to be able to take a look and move forward in doing some of these things at home. It was a kind of a voodoo practice for doctors to concoct things for you that way. But there's always been fun beverages and flavors. I think there's a lot of validity around drinks that are alcoholic and non-alcoholic for religious reasons, for social reasons, and all that. So, Chase, I think you've got a little bit more in the history that you can share on the other side of it. That's not so
Yeah.
fermented.
Well, I think you make an interesting point in that, fermentation in alcohol and the creation of alcoholic drinks has been around for a pretty long time. I mean, mead is one of those things that everyone sort of thinks about with, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, and so forth. You know, they say that distillation in practice kind of occurred over 2,000 years ago. So, to try to talk about the history of alcohol and cocktails would be a pretty expansive and pretty long discussion. But I think something that, for me feels pertinent to discuss is the history of the word cocktail and how long it's been around, because mixed drinks and cocktails, as we think about it, have only really been around for about 200 years. Give or take. But, it first became a word that was attributed to a mixed non-alcoholic drink in 1803, and then in about 1806 it was first described in a pamphlet as a stimulating liquor composed of spirits of any kind with sugar, water, and bitters. So that's just an interesting thing to think about. 1806, really, right? Just barely 200 years old is a cocktail.
Yeah, that's really kind of new considering how long wines have been around and beers and true alcoholic. But it sounds to me more like it's more around actually blending flavors and creating something that you can sip and enjoy and get a little bit of buzz on.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else that is also worth bringing up is, man, you can't talk about American history without talking about alcohol, right? I mean, some of the most prolific times in America and some of the most just prevalent things that we know and think about today are based around alcohol, right? I mean, Prohibition created the speakeasy culture that so many of today's best restaurants and best bars seek to emulate the feeling of, right? Without the
So
prohibition
basically,
of
100 years after that pamphlet that described the first cocktail, within reason, 100 120 years, all of a sudden the Americans found alcohol to be inappropriate, right? Which only did the opposite effect and made people want it more. So it's interesting that speakeasy is something you brought up, because it's still a very relevant style. It's obviously it's not illegal anymore to drink unless you're underage, but the speakeasy concept still draws a lot of people into it. I've been to speakeasies in many different places, and there some of them are the original speakeasies that were used back in those days, and they're kind of hard to find.
Yeah, so many of those speakeasies and so much of the Prohibition culture really drove a ton of innovation and served to really do the opposite of what you would imagine Prohibition would do, and in that there was more creation of incredible cocktails and more creation of really incredible bars across America. I mean, you think about just some of the iconic drinks that are associated with different cities and have entire cultures around them now, right? Like New Orleans is a city that's predicated on their history with cocktails, right? You have things like the Sazerac, and I mean, the Carousel Bar is maybe the most iconic bar in all of America. It's been around for over 100 years. In Philadelphia, you have Fish House Punch. And then, of course, you can't talk about any iconic drink like, of course, the Manhattan, which I'll give you one guess as to where the Manhattan was first created, Dan.
Oh, man. I'm going to guess somewhere in New York, huh?
New York City. Yeah, New York. And a pretty cool thing, it was actually created at a dinner party in the 1880s for Winston Churchill's mom.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, taking it still back in the Prohibition era, there's beverages and cocktails. So clearly you couldn't have alcohol. So the desire to have it, and you mentioned innovation, things that have not only innovated but proliferated and become mainstays at today's bars. The old fashioned. that was definitely a speakeasy kind of iconic Prohibition era cocktail. And I spent a little over a dozen years of my life living up in Wisconsin, and the old fashioned is a mainstay at every dining establishment. It's certainly it's not going anywhere, and I know it's just about on every white tablecloth cocktail menu and most bars as well. And everyone's got their own version of it. So it's really interesting that there's that growth, that innovation period that has brought us almost, I'd segue into what's happening today, right? Into a whole nother perspective of these beverages, going a little bit more into low alcoholic or even
Yeah.
non-alcoholic, right?
Oh, yeah. Let's go ahead and make that transition. Let's talk about today. So, I'll let you lead. What was your big takeaway as you were looking at today's trends in bar and cocktail? What were you leaning into? It sounds like
Yeah,
low alc, non-alc.
well, some of the discoveries, I would say just prior to the pandemic, this was really starting to ramp up. And then, unfortunately, when the pandemic happened, tough times actually statistically grows booze consumption, beer and booze. And so we're on our way to doing these healthier, better for you kombuchas, different beverages of that nature. We're making a play onto the retail shelves and even into your coffee shops, where they were making their own kombucha and things. And then it kind of dipped for a bit while the pandemic happened. But now we're back in the swing of things, and people are back into health and wellness is, of course, the big macro trend. But some of the data that I found was surprisingly pretty large. There's some metrics from IWSR, which is a drinks market analysis forecast, that 25.4% growth in non-alcoholic offerings in the U.S. through 2026. So a little over 25% growth of non-alcoholic beverages, which is completely opposite of prohibition, right?
Yeah.
So,
No, that's pretty interesting. I'm glad that we've done it this way, and hopefully, listeners, let us know if this is fun or not for us to have completely different views. But when I was doing my research, the thing that I came to, and very different from mocktails, is the fact that it seems like there's an expansion of and kind of a boom for kind of specialty liquors. And what I mean when I say that is the fact that we're starting to see more, and this echoes a bit of what we talked about in our regional Mexican episode, but we're starting to see more regional and special liquors. So things like Raicilla and Sotol, which are traditional Mexican spirits. Raicilla, of course, being a single distilled agave spirit, and Sotol being very similar to mezcal, but instead of using agave, it uses a native Mexican shrub. So similar but different. And we're also starting to see things like the growth of soju and baijiu, aquavit, right? So we're looking at a new world of kind of exploration and expansion. And I think it's a perfect thing to think of it as an expedition into, with the popularity and the growth of new cuisines, new cultures, and more diversity in America. It's just a natural step that as more people are eating different foods, more people are going to be drinking the culture's beverages that match those foods.
Sure. I mean, it's a really solid point. And we may have maybe slightly different angles on it, but I think they come together pretty nicely. And you mentioned it is bringing these regional beverages, exploring regions, and also some of the information I found that I guess was the most surprising to me was the rise of acceptance in general. And I think that has a lot to do with, as we look to younger generations who are more aware, who are willing to listen, explore, taste, try other people's cultural preferences and tastes or religious reasons. But even just as I mentioned before, health and wellness is such a big part of today's growth, and that is such a macro trend. But getting a little bit tighter into the micro side of it, and beneficial and functional drinks, as I mentioned, kombucha has clearly got some good digestive aids and all those other great things that are going on in it. But there's also this other like more sensitive side to low alcohol and no alcohol, which was the rise of inclusivity and the role that plays. So there's bars literally that are now open. I know in New York City, LA, that are non-alcoholic spirits. That's so you can be a recovering alcoholic. You can go out with someone who can't drink for medical reasons. Maybe they're on medication. You can go out and socialize still, because that's really to me the basis of having a cocktail. It's a social experience, right? And so I thought that was really, really interesting. That
it seems like the kind of hinge, the crux that we agree on is it seems like there's a natural space currently. Maybe it's to term it, there's a renaissance or a proliferation of what mixed drinks can be and what they can be made out of. Right?
Yeah.
We're in a time where it feels like both on the alcoholic and non-alcoholic side, there's more resources, more tools, more ingredients than ever. And I don't necessarily know if diners is the right word, but maybe imbibers, people who are going out with the intent to have a drink, can do so with more freedom than ever before. And whether it's something hard, whether it's something that's non-alcoholic, there's more space for a bar or an operation to be able to build around that and see success.
Yeah, and something interesting to the whole idea, of course, F&B. We always want our manufacturers to be profitable. We want our operators to be profitable. People going out to purchase these cocktails or mocktails, they just don't want a sugary sweet alternative. That's the Shirley Temple was always the kiddie cocktail, right? And
right.
So there's literally a cottage industry to some degree, and I wouldn't even say cottage because this non-alcoholic industry just in wine itself is something like $52 million industry annually, and it's grown 23% from just last year. That's non-alcoholic wine.
Yeah, I found some pretty cool numbers. In just 2022 alone, there were 2,050 distilleries in America.
Wow.
That's expected to grow by 20% at an annual growth rate over the next 5 years. So, I mean, if anything, I think that just goes to tell you that there has been what seems to be a massive amount of identified white space where people who are looking for cocktails don't just want to drink Jack Daniels and don't just want to drink Jose Cuervo anymore. They're looking for more options, whether it be non-alcoholic or just artisanal takes on traditional alcohols and liqueurs made by local distilleries and local craftsmen.
Yeah. I think you might have uncovered a pretty interesting statistic about the growth of distilleries. Yeah. While you're saying that, it just made me think of microbreweries, about 10 years ago, how the microbrews just boomed. Like they were so hot, all the major manufacturers, Anheuser-Busch and Coors and Miller and all those guys purchased all these small up and comers that are now mainstays on at your bar or your grocery store or liquor store where you buy your beer. And I think the micro distilleries is going to do something similar to what micro brew pubs and microbreweries themselves did. They were at an all-time high. The best numbers I could find around that is they climbed to 9,552, which is just last year's numbers of total breweries, operating breweries in the U.S. So that's shows me there is white space there for the micro distilleries.
Yeah, every time I go back, and I have a really fantastic store near my house that just has you name it when it comes to liquors, but every time I go back, I see something that I've never seen before. Right? I talked a bit about Amaro earlier and Aquavit, but last time I was there, I saw a local distillery that was making hooch, right? and selling it in
Hooch.
stores. And hooch, yeah,
Is that
hooch
a
is,
real? That's a real blend. Hooch.
yeah, it's essentially fortified, wine of sorts, but
Yeah.
it's 20% by volume. So you're starting to see these
All
things
right.
that maybe you've never seen before. You're starting to see a proliferation in moonshine. Moonshine has taken over America to some degree. There's even the show Moonshiners. So, you know,
Yeah.
we're in a cool space for just pure exploration, and people seem to be excited and willing to try new things because it's a space that's been dominated by the same general alcohols and same general brands for the last 80 years.
Yeah, if not longer. So I mean, listen, respectfully, so there are some brands that have done great things, and now they're adding, unique flavors and getting on trend with some of this. But there's also a bit of these major label brands, in my perception, that once you start, all of a sudden you add sweet fire honey, and you're a whiskey. It's like, okay, I mean, it makes sense, it matches, but I'd rather mix that myself and create that flavor in a drink and have that as my base. It's just a good core base. But but it doesn't feel so, I guess, so negative in my mindset when a small up and coming kind of distillery does it, because to me it feels more innovative and more authentic
Sure.
than the
Absolutely.
big national labels putting it out there. So there's also a lot of interesting things in the canned space, which we haven't even talked about. Bottles and cans and things like that. But you know it was never, now there's vodka, there's tequila, there's literally liquor in a can already mixed.
Sure. I can buy wine in a can, right?
Well, sure.
There's yeah, there's something to also just be said about the fact that there's a ton of space for exploration of packaging. You can buy wine in a Tetra Pak now, right? And
Yeah.
it's going to taste slightly different from the canned wine to the bottled wine, and depending on what color the bottle, whatever light can do to that wine. So, yeah,
Right.
it's cool to see the fact that not only is there space for exploration of new cocktails, new liquors, different types of spirits, but also how you get them to your customers and what makes it impactful in that way as well. So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
the way I keep describing it is it feels like a renaissance in the world of beverage.
It certainly is. I always say this anytime I'm speaking to a client and sharing my thoughts about their products, is I always suggest don't forget about pairing it with a beverage, because I believe that it's really important to always make sure you have the complete offering. So many people focus on center of the plates and the sides or desserts, and they tend to forget about the beverage. And to me, it's probably one of the largest profit margin areas on the menu. And so, I mean, it's just like, don't forget that place, because you could
Hey,
add a
I'm
little
right there
twister
with you.
to it, and you've got something wonderful that's going to be an extra $5 that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, not only does it drive more value and better sales, but also it makes the dining experience better, right?
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I wanted to talk about as well, was as we look towards the future, we're starting to see the growth of more cuisines in America than just your traditional Italian
Yeah.
and so forth. But we're starting to see Korean cuisine gain more popularity, and in turn, I think soju is the perfect example of something that mixes a bit of both of what we're talking about, and that it's 14% ABV. It's something
Yep.
that's really light and refreshing. It can be a low alcoholic alternative for people who want to go out and have a drink, but not really have to, uh, you know, feel bad or guilty about it. But also, of course, it pairs beautifully with Korean food, and it makes it that much more rich of a dining experience. And why wouldn't
Right.
we see
Right.
that with more cuisines?
I think it's also important, I mean, it seems obvious, but I'm going to say it because not everyone may understand that percentage to proof equation. And it's pretty simple, but it's, if it's something's 15%, it's going to be 30 proof. So it's just a doubling of that number.
Sure.
And so the higher you get, of course, the more alcohol is in the contents of that beverage. So that's why it makes something like you're just talking about soju so important to understand, is you can have essentially you're having a cocktail. It does have fermentation to the point of alcohol being created inside of there, but it's not overridden by the alcohol flavor. So you said you had some soju not too long ago at a local restaurant. What was the drink that do you remember what that drink was?
So actually, my wife and I, we love all kinds of Korean and Japanese food. We went to a Korean restaurant and we brought our own soju because I don't want to
Oh,
say connoisseurs or aficionados, but we certainly like to try different types of soju. But a preferred one for us is called Jinro is Back.
okay.
And it's super clean, it's crisp, it's refreshing. And it's just a really simple, easy, light sipping drink. It's the best way I can describe it is like the cleanest water you've ever tasted. Really,
Right. So
it's
you were drinking
fantastic.
it on ice. You weren't making a mixed beverage out of it then.
No, drinking it essentially in small little shooters, but just as a sipper.
Yeah.
Bottle was in ice. It was at a little BYOB, and it pairs beautifully with really nice light things like sushi and fish, or like spicy dishes as well. It's a good palate cleanser.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I think it really goes well with a lot of really nice light Southeast Asian flavors.
Yeah, and I think it's really also important to share. Like you said, you're pairing it with foods or cuisine of its region, right? And so there's some menus I was taking a look at. Chef Rick Bayless, we've mentioned about him in our Mexican cuisine podcast. But he's done a great job at actually incorporating low alcohol spirits as well. He's got a cocktail called the Sunset Spritz with a DHOS aperitif, a little syrup, Topo Chico, and an orange peel garnish. I mean, these drinks are not cheap either. I mean, they're $13, $14 a cocktail, but these are low alcoholic cocktails. Mango chili sparkler, or he's got a version of his own Greyhound that's also low alcoholic with a low alcoholic gin, a little lime grapefruit, a little simple syrup, and a top note of tonic. So it's pairing it with the cuisine. As I had said earlier, I think it's important to think about the beverage and the food. You just reinforced that you were drinking soju with its nationality,
Sushi
basically.
and fish. And
Yeah.
I also got to make sure to correct myself. I think I said Southeast Asian. I meant Northeast Asian flavors, Korea and Japan being more commonly geographically Northeast Asian. So my apologies to any listeners going, this guy's crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, hey, you know what? I said Wolfgang Puck was from Australia, and
This is true. Very definitely
knew.
not Australian.
In my head, I was saying Austria, and my mouth just kept on going, Australia. And I said it 3 times during that podcast. I was like, I know better. What's wrong with me? Yeah. So, a couple other interesting things for, future thoughts on beverages in general. There's been a lot of growth. I have some information from a gentleman, Peter Park, who is basically, he exports premium Australian brands to the Asian market. And he's seen a lot of things of competition in alcoholic and soft drinks. He believes the market should be focused on more of lifestyle choice experiences, which I agree. Consumer education, health benefits are, he's claiming, more important than flavors. That I might have to challenge him on a little bit. I think flavors are truly important beyond
Agreed.
just
Agreed.
the benefits
Especially if
of
you're
it.
drinking something that's fundamentally not great for you, right? Cocktails
Well,
aren't
I think this is
a
about
panacea.
This is more about drinking something that's like good digestive aid, or it's
Oh,
got some
sure.
health
Okay, I
benefits. It's going to help your hair grow back if you drink it, but it doesn't taste so good. So,
Sure.
yeah, but it's really interesting. You mentioned soju. He's spoken around that. It's typically 16 to 25% alcohol. I know in the U.S. it's regulated to be nothing higher than 20%. Or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it does maintain. here in the U.S. at least, a lower alcohol percentage. But there's some
Yeah.
great ways to play with it. You said you drank it on ice and sipped it on shooters. Some other fun ways that we might consider, a little innovation thoughts would be maybe a strawberry soju sour. That could be a
Yeah.
fun, like muddled strawberry, right? Maybe even mix it with lemon and lime soda or grapefruit, a little pineapple juice. So I think there's a lot of
It's
fun ways to play with things.
to me really you can apply soju in any way that you apply vodka. Um, because it's cleaner, it's lesser ABV, and you can use it in the same ways and not have to feel as bad about it, and not have to feel like you have to really be super. Not to say that you shouldn't be careful. You should always drink responsibly, but you're able to control what you're having and feel okay about having 1 to 2 drinks. Whereas if you're having a vodka cocktail, well, that's a much stronger cocktail than if you use the same by volume of soju. So it just allows you to be a bit more flexible. It allows you to have the same general flavors, and really still enjoy a cocktail and try something new. I think that's what it's always about, right? It's just trying
Well, there's
something
also
new and finding what you
perceptions.
like.
There's also perceptions like, oh, they're not drinking, right? Oh, what's wrong with them? And so now you can have something that maybe it's for a part of fitting in, maybe it's for your own health choices. Having these low alcohol or even no alcoholic drinks allow you to socialize and be a part of without putting yourself in danger. And I think that's really important to understand is that, just because alcohol is this social experiment, as I said before, it's not for everybody. my
Agreed.
my wife will only have 1 or 2 drinks during the course of any evening that we're out hosting or entertaining, because if she has, as much as I do, I'm much bigger than her body mass, but if she does that, she's got a headache, for 2 days afterwards, and it's literally
Sure.
polluting your body. So now you can have that same experience, and also enjoy yourself and wake up feeling good. So
Yeah, I think the last thing to touch on as we sort of wrap it up here is, looking towards the future of cocktails. It seems like we have a beautiful blue sky out in front of us. There's really just the choice of where you want to fly, right? And to me, it seems like we have a beautiful opportunity for more uh, restaurants, operations to serve more cocktails that align with either people's behaviors and offer people things that are more functional, lighter, or more cocktails that fit in with their brand. If you're a Mexican based establishment, why not get something like Sotol or Raicilla? If you're a Korean restaurant, why not have soju on your menu? And Japanese, why not have more sake options? It seems like the diners of America are ready for that, and we're seeing more people producing high quality versions of all of those things. So it's a good time for beverages because it's pure proliferation, it seems.
yeah, it does. It's definitely an opportunity for blue sky innovation and allowing people to bring in just about any flavor they want. I was just going to add, I've been sipping on a little limonada with some fresh mint, for anyone who could have heard a jingle of the ice. But there's something just, simply adding a sprig of fresh mint to something like a sparkling lemonade that just changes the dynamics of the beverage. A little bruising of that mint, drop it into the glass, and it's elevated the cocktail. It's elevated the mocktail. This is alcohol free, but every time I put that glass to my mouth and drink, there's a little fragrance, a little bouquet of fresh mint, and other nationalities that don't drink alcohol, this is something that they do. They add citrus or fresh fruits or herbs into that
Yeah, we'll
drink
have
as
to
well.
do a full episode on mocktails because that's a terribly underserved space where there is literally no exploration. It feels like nationally for mocktails on menus, and
Yeah, I think there's
to your
a
point,
little bit
it can be as
more.
simple as one garnish.
It can be a garnish, a slice of orange or a slice of lemon, something fresh that adds that component of freshness to it, and you can have a beautiful drink. So listen, it seems like we've taken more time than we should have, but there's so much more to talk about. We're going to have to cut it short here, and thank our listeners, and we invite you to join us on all the platforms where you find your podcasts. We should be available on anything Amazon, Apple, iHeartRadio, all those locations, right? Anything else there, Chase?
You name it, we're probably on it. Apple, Spotify. You just look us up, and if you can't find us, you let us know, and we'll make sure that we're on there. But otherwise, feel free to find us.
We'll send it to you.
That's right. And otherwise, feel free to find us on LinkedIn, on either of our LinkedIn pages, either Chase Obenchain or Dan Follacy. And of course, you can also find us on the Flavor Expedition page on LinkedIn as well. Feel free to reach out to us on either of those, and we'll see you soon.
All right, guys. Until next time, explorers, have a great day, and we'll see you out in the field.
See you in the field.